This podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical advice. It exists only to entertain. In a late 1800s Transylvanian hamlet, a man is visited upon by an unwelcome intruder of the night, coming in through his window.
Oh my goodness, who are you? Stop!
You are just the man I'm looking for.
You back off, you devil! You'll not be drinking my blood tonight, vampire!
If you'll just give me a moment to explain.
I cast thee out!
Look, easy there. I'm not here to suck anyone's blood.
Wait, you're not?
No, that's gross. What is it with you people in the blood drinking thing? I don't know how people come up with this stuff.
You're of the devil. I can feel his presence. He is the source of your supernatural powers.
Powers? What powers?
Your superhuman strength, for one, is legendary.
Not really. I've got a bad shoulder and a bum knee. It was hard enough for me to climb up your trellis to get in this window. Thanks for having that well built, by the way.
But you have the fangs.
Yeah, I see how you think that, but I've got bad gums and it makes my teeth look very long. Hurts to bite an apple, let alone someone else's flesh. It's hell to brush these teeth, bleeding all over. Don't get me started on my halitosis. I'm pretty self-conscious about it, really.
But your skin is as pale as the moonlight out there, like the townspeople say. Here you are at night because the sun would...
It would break my skin out in a rash, so yeah, I'm usually dropping in on people at night. I don't catch fire in the sun. I just get a little flaky and blustery here and there. More annoying than debilitating, if I'm being honest.
So you're not immortal?
Ha! Immortal? Buddy, I've got a laundry list of health problems in addition to those I mentioned. I think something's really, really wrong with me. My pee is all sorts of weird colors, and I get abdominal pains, and I don't always think straight. Who would want to live forever like this?
Okay, I admit not the vampire I was expecting. But if you're not a blood-sucking denizen of the night, why are you here at this hour as a storm approaches?
Well, I was walking by and I thought maybe you'd be interested in a window installation package. The glass doesn't look very energy efficient. I bet your fireplace is going nonstop in the winter, am I right?
Wait, you're selling windows? Really?
Yeah, we gotta make a living. I could do a bundle deal for you and even see about updating your outhouse. While we're at it, what do you say?
I think, to be honest, I'd rather you be a satanic monster at this point.
All right, fine, not interested. Just doing my job. By the way,
Yes?
can I use that bathroom of yours? I got this problem with my intestines and I ate a meat pie that isn't sitting with me right now. I could really use an outhouse.
Fine. Down the trellis and out the back.
Thanks. You are a lifesaver. Sorry for disturbing you, and I apologize in advance for the absolute destruction I'm going to do to that outhouse.
Oh. Well, it's a 19th century outhouse, so it's already pretty bad.
I'll leave my card here on the windowsill in case you change your mind.
Yep. Time to go now.
I'm gonna annihilate the bathroom.
What was that?
Oh, nothing. Wow, we were.
That was supposed to be a mwahaha.
Wow. Wow.
This is For Historians, a podcast delving into the archives of medical history. As three emergency physicians, we will explore the unusual ailments, treatments, physicians, and all related material having to do with the healing arts. I'm Max, and I'm joined here by my good friends and colleagues, Aaron and Mike. Gentlemen, are you ready to take the wind out of Bram Stoker's sails?
Wait, I thought it was Bram Stoker.
I don't. I almost made that typo a bunch of times typing it, and I'm like, oh man,
Funny
what a missed
story.
opportunity.
Funny story. I haven't gotten a haircut in a long time. Like,
I can tell.
yeah, it's weird, and also like as you get older, your hair grows at different rates, so the sides grow much faster than the top. And I was at work, and I went in the back, and I looked in the mirror, and I came out, and I was like, why didn't anyone tell me that I looked like Bram Stoker's Dracula because of that haircut? I was like, come on. I looked like an idiot.
It's like the blown out version of Hulk Hogan's haircut.
Yeah, no, just really, wide on the side. He had that big, like, Emperor Palpatine
Actually,
haircut.
it's really in right now. You should consider rocking it.
It's not the mullet anymore. It's like really long on the side and short on the top.
The mullet is so in. I have like 2 guys on my hockey team that have mullets.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, it's a new mullet though.
And it's the new mullet, NU mullet, like new metal. So shout outs and announcements. I think this is probably as good a place as any to break a little bit of big news for the show here. So after a year of every other week releases, we are excited to say that starting next month, being November, we will be looking to release a new episode each and every week. And what this means is you're going to get our regular show like this one here today and all the other ones before it. And on the other weeks, we are going to do a Poor Historian show with a little bit of a different flavor. And there we're going to do a bunch of introductions, interviews of different people in the world of medical history. So this will include some authors, this will include museum curators, and even a few super fans who may drop by and kind of help out and give their perspective on the show. So with that being said, we'll also use this other show to kind of test out some new segment ideas and things like that. So the good news is you're still going to get the show you enjoy, just like this one. And then we've got other material coming your way starting, as I said, in November, and pretty excited to get that off the ground. What do you guys think?
Oh, it's exciting.
We're going to be doing one every day, right?
Every day releases.
Yeah.
Go big. Let's do it.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a lot of work at all.
No,
I think it's going to be easy.
Pretty easy.
Yeah. You just get a virtual assistant to do it.
Yeah. Do we don't have an assistant, do we?
No, virtual
I'm the
assistant. You
assistant.
just hire him online.
Oh,
And just
is it a
write.
computer or a person?
It's
It
a person.
looks like you're writing a podcast. Would you like
Yes.
help writing a
Mm.
podcast?
PLZ.
Is that what Clippy's doing nowadays?
Who?
Yep, Clippy.
Clippy from Microsoft Word 94.
It looks like you're making a
I
TikTok.
thought you said
Can I help
Snooki.
you make a TikTok?
Like
Who
I
knows
know.
what Snooki's
I
doing,
don't
man?
know. She's doing something, I'm sure. So either way, on to our main event and a common angle thread that totally pulls together our conception of monsters with a medical angle. We'll give it over to Aaron.
Yeah. No, kind of a potpourri of different topics. So we're just going to go through, being October, we're going to look at some different monsters and medical aspects of them, starting off with vampires. So, we could probably argue back and forth about what constitutes a vampire, especially
And
now
we're
that
going
it
to.
seems to include handsome, rich teens who live in the Pacific Northwest that can run really fast. But regardless of what your conception of vampire is, they are a staple of Halloween. There's an actual town like around the Olympic National Park where the whole Twilight series is set. You know that, right? Like you could actually
I haven't
visit it,
seen
I
any
think.
of the Twilight series. I
don't.
know
They're not
of
really
it,
your
but I haven't
vibe.
seen it.
That's like, yeah, Max. I
Wait,
think
you're not
you
a
would
vampire
spontaneously
fan?
combust. Well,
No, I
not
like
those,
vampires, but I
not them.
like real vampires. Like
Mhm.
I am old school Bram Stoker's type vampires.
Mm.
Yeah, you
Wait,
know,
the Tom Cruise one?
Yes.
Like that movie?
yeah,
Yeah, like
Was he in that? Bram
You know,
Stoker?
Tom
you don't
Cruise.
care what-
Yeah, he was the main
Well,
one.
he was
Or did I get
interviewed-
an interview with the vampire.
interviewed
Oh,
with a
oh, oh.
vampire. Yeah, that's Anne Rice.
Which my
the
wife told
Twilight
me
is-
today that there's going to be a reboot of that, or it's coming out very shortly.
Yeah, everything that's old is new again because they can't think of any new ideas.
Well, that's because we as a society have gone like thousands of years with art and creation, and now we've thought of all the ideas. There's no more
Yeah, pretty
new
much.
original ideas.
It's nothing new.
It's not their fault.
So the specific term vampire appears to date back to the Slavic peoples of southeastern Europe and way far back into history, as early as the 9th or 10th centuries. And back then, essentially, they were all some variant of a reanimated corpse that preyed on the living. They were initially described as dark in color and bloated, and they often were described as having blood around the mouth, as you would expect a reanimated corpse to look.
That doesn't sound sexy.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. No.
That
And
sounds like a zombie, not a vampire.
Well, nice foreshadowing. And so they would dig up graves and they would kind of think they might be vampires because some of the corpses appeared, quote, fresher than normal. And they talk about sometimes the burial shrouds look like they had been chewed through. Of course, this is probably just more related to the natural way that bodies decompose more than anything else.
And the insects and things that get into the
right, exactly.
casket.
It's gonna be a lot of things chewing on the shroud.
I'm sure the caskets of that time period had a nice rubber seal on them that kept all that stuff out.
Yeah, lots of aluminum. Mm-hmm. Drinking blood was maybe part of it, but it really wasn't a big part of the early conception of vampires.
But was there lots of like copious sex and those sort of things that you see in all of the vampire?
Zero.
Who would want to have sex with that? Bloated.
No, they were no.
I mean, we have the internet in the 21st century. Somebody out there is into that.
Probably true.
But, wait, and they looked fresher than normal. Like they had fades and they were like wearing a cool suit.
They're all lined up.
Man, that guy's fresh.
In that setting, there is talk of an identifiable, it's called a vampire epidemic in the late 1700s. So in that part of the world, there was an outbreak of some disease or another where it just really kicked up a frenzy of activity of what they thought were these vampires causing all of this illness.
So there's like an illness in the area. A lot of people are dying. They start blaming it, is what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, and they blamed it on vampires. So that what happened was then there was this like rash of exhumation. So they just dug up all the corpses. And they did what they would do is they dig them up and like kill them a second time because they thought maybe this reanimated corpse was the cause. So they would like, that's when like staking them through the heart and all this stuff. They'd be like, kill them again.
Did the epidemic go away?
Yeah, it did not. Sadly, it continued to spread. And
wait, we don't have a vampire epidemic today, so they did something.
That's true.
But
that's true, that we know of.
We're being distracted by science. Seriously, like it's getting in the way.
Yeah, I want to be the part of the town hall meeting where all the angry Denzians of the area were like trying to figure out what to do. It's like, all right, got all these people dying, and that one guy has to stand up and be like, all right, let's dig up everybody who died and just kill them again.
Now,
that's my idea and consensus.
Everyone's like, yeah, there was definitely an association between these quote unquote vampires that were dug up and continued disease. The wonderful fact of causation versus what's consequence would suggest that maybe they weren't helping themselves as much as they thought. But regardless, unknown how many died, but probably thousands and thousands of people. Multiple.
And we don't know what this disease was, or
well, there are a couple suspects. Right, it was a rural Europe in the 1700s, so we really don't know. The two main suspects for the vampire plague epidemic that I was able to find, one was called pellagra, which we'll talk about, and the other was rabies, which is, that'll be a fun one. So pellagra is boring. It's got a cool name, but it's kind of boring. It's just a vitamin deficiency. So, and the reason why it would have appeared at this time in Europe is because this is about when they introduced corn to the region. And corn is very poor in vitamin B3. I don't know if y'all knew this, but you're not getting enough vitamin B3.
I thought you were talking about the metal band, and I couldn't remember the name of any of their songs.
The metal band, vitamin B3.
Yeah, I don't know.
That metal. Oh, I saw a guy that looked like the lead singer of Korn yesterday. I swear to God, I double taked. I was a college kid. I was like, and. Anyway, it's not an interesting aside.
I have a Korn aside. I was at, I think, Target recently, and I was checking out, and the cashier, she had like an old school Korn shirt on, and she probably was like in her 20s. And I was like, oh man, I haven't seen a Korn shirt for a long time. And she stared at me. She was like, yep. I was like, yep. That's...
You guys are knocking it out of the park with these asides.
I was like,
really, really good stories.
Yep. So I just wanted to like relate to somebody in a different generation, and she was like, "No, all right."
Anyway,
middle age now.
So pellagra symptoms they include skin inflammation, especially skin exposed to sunlight, terrible breath, behavioral disturbances, which could include confusion, but also sort of excited delirium. So like people literally running around and being crazy, and of course diarrhea, as one gets. along with sort of generalized weakness. And it is fatal if you don't supplement it. So we don't see it very often at all right now, most commonly in alcoholics, because their diet consists of
Corn and booze.
Corn and booze, or
Yeah.
booze made of corn.
I mean, they're just extremely nutritionally deficient.
Yeah,
But I can see how people in that time period were like, wow, these people are like, their skin's kind of coming apart. They're becoming more and more unhinged, and they're eventually dying. Like, okay, I dig it up and stab it again, and like put a stay, because that.
And they might have looked kind of fresh, because I don't know, I don't know.
Well, I wonder. Now, granted, we don't think there are any colonists in Australia at the time, but because of Vegemite, do you think that they would have had vampires?
Was Vegemite deficient in B3?
No, maybe it's just essentially B vitamins. In a wonderfully tasty spread.
Yeah, they would have managed to stave this off completely.
So they wouldn't have vampires.
No Australian vampires.
The first Australian, we'll say colonists, but
that was prisoners, mate.
I don't remember.
I don't know. I'm sure somebody had to go there.
They landed there, and they're like, you know what? Let's make some Vegemite. That was the first thing they did.
Yeah, I don't
nutrition paste.
We'd have to. That could be another topic.
That's an episode. Vegemite.
I don't know enough about it. I mean, I know that it exists.
You're the Australian.
Yeah, I mean, de facto. Yeah,
more Australian.
In a lifetime since I've been there. Yeah.
The other big contender is rabies. So rabies, I wrote down here, thankfully, a rare disease. I should say the caveat: it's very rare here in the developed country. There still are places where it's much more common, but universally fatal, almost universally fatal, unless treated right away with immunization. Currently, rabies is old. It's old enough to have Greek and Sanskrit language roots, and it is a single-stranded RNA virus wrapped in a bullet-shaped protein case, which sounds cool, and there's a lot of words in there, and I don't remember how to fully explain them yet, but super simple, right? RNA is like one little tiny molecule strand, and it still manages to do all its damage.
Does the bullet shape make it go into people easier? It's like more aggressive.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know why they say bullet-shaped protein. I think they just like to think they're cool when they're looking at stuff under microscopes.
They've probably never seen a bullet. It's probably...
But anyway, passed from the saliva of infected animals or humans, almost always with bite wounds. In the case of the vampire epidemic, it could have been spread by wolves or humans. Nobody knows. The time from the bite to dying is measured in months. So it would have been hard to track. And then if you think about it, if you got bit and then you got sick slowly over time, they may not have figured out the transmission, but it would have been kind of terrifying, because what it does is it travels up the peripheral nerves to the central nervous system. And then as it gets into the brain and around that region, it causes a bunch of inflammation, and people get terribly confused and tremulous and completely delirious, and then they start drooling like crazy, which is something that rabies does exclusively, probably to pass itself on to the next victim. They also have sort of this severe fear of water. So I mean, if anybody really likes crazy medical stuff, you certainly could try to find YouTube videos of folks that are in the late stages of rabies.
Don't do it. I'll advise
if you want,
you can't unsee it.
If you want some nightmare fuel, it is a terrifying disease.
And you can only you can imagine from the perspective of people living back in that day that would be very hard to wrap your mind around, like what is happening to these people when you have no understanding of those things. And it's pretty crazy, because they get these. They become words like hydrophobic, so they're like afraid to drink water. And what happens is, for some reason, the rabies virus causes the esophagus to spasm anytime you swallow. And so if they try to swallow water or fluid, or obviously food too, it causes super painful spasms. So that's why you see like animals and humans that have this, they are like frothing at the mouth, because it hurts so much to swallow that in the esophagus spasms that nothing goes down, it kind of comes up. And so that saliva is rich with the rabies virus, and it's a pretty well adapted virus to do what it does.
Yeah, it's scarily amazing. It's so specifically tailored to what it does.
Yes.
It is quite amazing.
Well, think over the millennia. I mean, you can't even wrap your mind around the amount of time that it's existed.
That's the thing, right?
So the bad rabies virus has disappeared. Like, they kill you right away. Like, you don't exist anymore. But the other guys are like, just wait. And then now death.
Yep. It's crazy. So this whole epidemic lasted at least 20 or 30 years. And so it brought up the sort of the concept of the vampire as a myth into the broader culture where it was picked up and spread. There was enough time with this sort of crazy phenomenon, this social phenomenon, as a response to whatever this disease was, that soldiers visiting the region noted mass desecration of graves and then sort of took this vampire myth back to Western Europe with them, which, I mean, it must have been a pretty crazy scene, medieval Europe being what it was anyway. And now there's all these graves just dug up all over the place.
Yeah,
And
you go over cresting the mountain, going down to this valley with all these graves and people who have like re-stabbed all these bodies. And you're like, look,
God,
I don't even know how to describe what we saw over there.
Yeah.
But there are vampires, and yeah, I believe you.
So this got picked up by Bram Stoker, who is, kind of credited with bringing the vampire into the modern age in a lot of ways. Wrote this in the late 1800s and was, to be honest, probably more a reflection of the age at the time than anything else. He was fascinated by these tales of Slavic vampires, but he basically took that as sort of a starting point for complete fiction. And then he combined it with elements of a true historic figure named Vlad the Impaler, who was a violent Slavic king from the same region from around the 1400s.
I thought it was Vigo the Carpathian.
Nice. Yes, don't cross the streams.
Ghostbusters 2. I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was a pretty good sequel.
I mean, he had that whole thing with the eyes like following you around the room while she was fixing the painting. That was creepy. I still remember that. That was weird.
No, it's a good one.
And then he sort of combined that with, Vlad the Impaler did use the actual name Dracula, which it meant son of the dragon in his tongue, from what I have picked up on the internet. I don't speak ancient Slavic languages.
Can you pronounce it in the native the way?
Dracula.
I mean, how do you pronounce it?
Dracula.
Dracula.
Dracula. I nailed it right there.
Dracula is a Rob Zombie song.
A good one.
Mm-hmm.
So NPR says Stoker picked Dracula randomly out of a Transylvanian history book. So I don't know if this was that.
Maybe he did Dracula, and then he ultimately found Vlad the Impaler, and then ultimately.
Yeah. We have some Vlad the Impaler fans here.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Not fans.
Not fans, but yeah, just like I'm a really visual person, so like you hear stories about like what he did. And you put yourself in that time, it's horrifying, right? It's like watching the worst horror movie I think he impaled thousands, tens of thousands of people on pikes and put them outside. Impaler,
so yeah.
Yeah, we'll put him outside his castle to kind of scare away people that might try to challenge him. Just think about
I should do that for my Halloween display.
Thousands of rotting corpses sitting up on these huge wooden spikes.
It makes an impression.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, you don't forget that one pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like walking past your house, Max. You're just like, I'm not going to mess with that one. Let's go to the next one. It's too scary.
Well, and like everything, some people are saying, was it really that bad, or was it propaganda against him? I don't know, man.
Who knows?
I wouldn't put it past a 15th century king to do stuff like that.
Maybe Vlad was super nice, and they just didn't like that. So like, how could he be that good?
Yeah, who knows?
Like it's a TMZ. Exposed. Vlad the Impaler is actually a murderer. No, he's just
got like a little dog. It's sort of endearing. He's like, he's an all right guy.
So then more recently in 1985, there was a brief flare of interest for another medical explanation of vampires. So porphyria, which is a prior star of the show. I think, Max, you talked about this with the Madness of King George, right?
I sure did.
Yeah. So as a reminder, rare hereditary disease of blood cell formation. I won't go back over that. Max is better at explaining it anyway. So
I've already forgotten it. So
yeah, body doesn't make the components of blood cells properly, and then you get this unused porphyrins which build up. But the theory is that the Eastern European royalty, because it's a hereditary disease, sort of suffered from multiple cases of severe porphyria. That might have, so it would affect the skin, the skin form would have affected the skin. And that same form, which is very severe and rare, causes photosensitivity, meaning you hate light. You get deformed because it scars you, turns your urine black. So people might have assumed that people were drinking blood because their urine was also bloody. And then because garlic can trigger attacks, some of the theories or articles say, well, this is why they didn't like garlic. And then they'll even go so far to be like, oh, they didn't like mirrors because they were ugly. And then They didn't like crucifixes because the Inquisition might have killed them because they were deformed. So
That all sounds
right.
really plausible.
You're right. Yeah, it's
Compelling
plausible,
argument. Case
but
closed.
also mostly discredited. So there are a lot of
No.
counter arguments that say that it's so rare that there's no way it could have accounted for. I think that's
boring.
the best counter argument, right? Because there couldn't have been more than a few people with this degree of effects. So how would that
wouldn't take
explain
many.
this massive?
Yeah, but if all the a lot of the royal families of the time were, keeping it in the family as you were making progeny, if there was that there, wouldn't it be more likely that it keeps circulating around?
You guys are Porphyria truthers. I love it.
It's the only
explanation.
questions.
Yeah, I'm just asking questions. Exactly. Anyway, I'm very thankful that we live in the present, and we know that, if you have a problem with vampires, you can just call Blade. And we also now know that vampires are actually dead sexy, which is way better than bloated corpse monsters.
But we have Twilight now, so half a dozen, 6 in the other.
What about Ebola? You think Ebola could, blood coming out of orifices, and I don't know how old Ebola is.
Actually, that's an interesting one. Well,
no, you can't just. Mike's just making up theories.
Yeah, no, I mean,
all these people are doing. Like, hey, a lot of people died. I wonder what it was.
Doing exactly what they did.
I don't know how an Ebola outbreak. Oh, unless it were endemic to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Europe,
and then now, right. You'd think that there'd be an account of like high fevers. Like being a vampire would mean that that would
explain the bats. Yeah, they didn't know how to measure fevers back then.
Oh, if it's the bats, it's got to be rabies.
Yeah, rabies are a known vector for sure.
Mike's starting to put yarn and push pins in the wall now.
I don't like bats specifically for rabies, and I don't like rabies specifically because of that
bats
video.
Are adorable. Dude, we have bats.
No, I get it. I understand.
Adorable. I love
It's not
bats.
the highest percentage vector of rabies, but there are so many bats that you're more likely to get rabies from a bat bite than I think possums and skunks are the highest.
I thought raccoons. I thought raccoons.
Raccoons are up there, but I think skunks are the highest.
Don't mess with a skunk, man.
Don't pet skunks.
Who gets close enough to get bitten by a skunk? And if they do, then that's on them. That's what I say. All right. So monster number 2, zombies. Zombies are much more recent in our more European-centric culture, with the word zombie first used in 1819. And I'll get to the reason why I termed it that way in just a second. So popularized as recently as the Night of the Living Dead movies, which is, like 50s, 60s, and has just exploded since then. The main concepts for zombies focus on animated decomposition and lack of any persistent thought, despite continued movement. So that's it looks like what I would say is a zombie, potentially. The word and concept were imported from Haitian beliefs of reanimation of the dead using sorcery or boku. And that's why I said Eurocentric. So there's a long history here, but I could easily see us not having access to Haitian history, right? Because it's just not something that we probably have a lot of contact with. And it's hard to find good sources about the further reaches back of zombie history because it gets pretty questionable pretty quickly. So I don't want to overstep and get into a deep analysis of where zombies came from and such, but it definitely is a concept that is prominent in conceptions of voodoo and so on. And it came from this idea that they could make sort of undead, brainless creatures. And sometimes there were implications they'd use the zombies for slavery. Other times it was creatures that had missed the afterlife. And so they were stuck in this sort of in-between state.
I thought it was the Umbrella Corporation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. That caused zombies. Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, I don't get it. What is that reference?
Resident Evil. Come on. Resident Evil.
So Haiti continues to be a source of sort of examination of the zombie concept.
That game sucks.
And it came into our culture a lot more. You guys I've never played that game. I've seen the bad movies, but I'm not watching them.
Yeah. You can't judge Resident Evil in the movies. The original game was
pretty bad. The first one's almost so bad it's good. Almost. So when the U.S. occupied Haiti from 1915 to 1934, which really great, just foreign policy win for us there, they picked up on what appeared to be a statute in the Haitian Penal Code that outlawed the use of substances that would create a canatotic state, I guess, implying that people were turned into zombies all the time in Haiti. And they imported that using a 1930s film called White Zombie, which is so problematic. So there's a man hires a witch doctor to kill the woman he loves who is engaged to someone else and then bring her back as a zombie so they can be together forever.
That is where Rob Zombie got the name for White Zombie. His the
movie?
early project
Really?
band. Yeah,
Nice.
and the reason being not so much for the problematic aspect, but apparently because it's considered to be the first zombie movie ever made.
A Harvard ethnobotanist called Wade Davis actually wrote a whole book that essentially argued that the zombie state was a real procedure done on people by voodoo practitioners. So he came up with a whole hypothesis, and he was down in Haiti for a while. So this is also very strange, but he hypothesized or figured out that witch doctors used a combination of tetrodotoxin from pufferfish and datura, which is a poisonous nightshade, to induce this paralytic delirium, after which they'd bury the victim alive. And then when they came to and escaped or were exhumed by the witch doctor, the trauma of the experience convinced them that they were dead, and then they were under the control of the witch doctor. So,
I mean, wow.
I mean,
that's a lot to process.
yes.
Like
What would they
So-
use them
basically
for, then?
drugging somebody, putting them into a shallow grave, and then pulling them out of it later after they're coming to. Yeah, it'd probably
Mhm.
change you as a person.
Yeah.
It would. There's some interesting toxicology there. So tetrodotoxin is a sodium channel blocker. So, and I don't know what we've talked about this before, but the human body does use sodium moving through little channels in a lot of ways in order to alter the charge on cell membranes very, very basically, and either move muscles or conduct electricity through nerves or determine the way the heart pumps and so on. And there's different kinds of channels in
I've been
different places.
struggling to write an action potential pun for the last couple of hours, and I can't.
Just doesn't.
No.
So, and then blocking these channels in one way or another causes really bad side effects. So any system that uses these channels just kind of stops working with bad results. And it does turn out that the channels in the heart are much less vulnerable to this tetrodotoxin than channels everywhere else. So there's kind of a division. And where this comes from in nature is with fugu fish. So there's these, I don't know if people have heard of this, but there's pufferfish. They make this toxin, and it's actually another example of extreme eating. So if you don't remove the glands that make the toxin from the pufferfish and you get a little bit of this in the fish and then eat it, like you die. So it's a very interesting sort of toxin that exists in nature.
And the question is like, why would people eat? I've seen it. So apparently, if you do prepare the fish right, and this is a whole among, I believe, especially like Japanese sushi, the people who are able to prepare pufferfish, it's a whole thing. You have to be certified. You have to train a certain way because you have to be able to take the gland out of the fish and cut the safest part of meat or whatever and whatnot. And so the taste apparently is described like it's good, it's unique or whatever. But I think one of the fun things about it is it makes your tongue kind of tingle and go a little bit numb. But that's because you're getting such a small amount of the toxin itself. I mean, what it really does, and I can't remember if you're going to go into this, but that tetrodotoxin in higher doses, the reason it kills you is that it paralyzes every bit of your moving musculature, right?
Yep.
So you can't move your arms, you can't move your legs, you can't breathe because you can't move your diaphragm.
And the first symptom is like tingling and such. So it's probably
Yes.
a rush. You're like, ooh, am I going to die? Am I going to die?
Well, and I
Why,
think
though?
probably that it's probably
That's a
dose
good
related.
question.
Like I don't remember talking about this in medical school explicitly, but considering a small amount makes your tongue tingle, I'm sure if you, let's say you were able to dose this a certain way and you got like not full paralysis, but you were like just sort of limp but still breathing, like I could see how that might induce, plus throw on top of it the deadly nightshade and the all the stuff that can do, so you're kind of like mostly paralyzed and you're tripping balls, medically speaking. I feel like you would probably, I would believe in magic at that point.
Yeah. Well, in this, you brought up the combination. This datura is one of the poisonous nightshades, which belong to the alkaloid group of poisons, which we have talked about in
last
other
episode.
episodes.
Aaron, we talked about that in the last episode.
I know.
It's all
So
connected.
yeah, it is. And you could, like, this is maybe plausible if people were really skilled. But then you'd have to bury them alive with some air that would get. So I don't know. It seems like
Well,
a stretch to me.
Aaron,
Like,
with your murder
people could
basement, I
just
mean, how do you
die.
approach this? I mean, do you
Well, I have a whole
typically
thing, but I
drug-
use modern materials. I mean, I have like a
Yeah.
hose and rubber and all sorts of stuff.
Hose.
A hose.
Well, maybe they just they threw dirt on top of them because
Made 'em
even a
feel
foot
like
of
they were
dirt's gonna
buried
be
alive.
really heavy. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then,
I don't know.
and you
It
just-
seems like a lot of work. But yeah. So anyway, that is this theory that there might be something really behind it. That there was actually a toxicologic way to make zombies. And no less than a medical journal than The Lancet in 1997 actually, quote unquote, investigated 3 cases of Haitian zombies. So they have these case reports of people that died and then were found again later. So one would maybe be interesting to talk about is a woman who was found wandering wordless and unresponsive a few years after a febrile illness when she was young that had apparently killed her. And then not sure how they went through the fact that she survived, but the family said they saw her somewhere else, and that she was just completely, I guess, acting as if she had no mind or thought. And that patient was diagnosed with catatonic schizophrenia, which, if you've seen, I mean, this is very unsettling, real psychological phenomenon where the schizophrenia causes you to just be essentially in a coma.
You're kind of like a waking coma. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen it once, and it was impressive and unsettling. You're absolutely right about that. I like to think, though, the person who got to write that article for the Lancet probably had that's a pretty engaging article. you know?
It almost made me click
would
on the
read that.
buy full PDF, but it was like $40, and I'm
Do
like,
you
no, I'm not
think?
gonna do that.
I feel like medical journals should probably adopt the BuzzFeed formula.
We should do it more. Absolutely.
Can you imagine like writing that research article, like the top 10 ways to
Yeah.
to
Top 10 zombie myths by
well, no,
Lancet.
I mean like top 10 antiplatelet drugs to use in cardiovascular disease. Like,
yeah, but
That's
only
way
5
less
of the
exciting. No,
only
it
5 of the
sucks.
links work.
bunch of pop-ups, ads everywhere.
Lastly, there is an actual psychological disease called phenomenon called Cotard's syndrome. That's French. I'm sure I just completely nailed it. I'm sure they all say Cotard. Specific type of Cotard, a specific type of delusion where the patient believes that their organs are rotting or that they are already dead and still animated. It was first described by Charles Bonnet in 1788, but that guy didn't name it. So Jules Cotard got credit in 1880. And actually, none other than friend of the podcast, Lindsay Fitzharris, has a good long Twitter thread on this. In rare cases of delusion, either induced by trauma or stroke or related to schizophrenia, people truly believe they're dead and act like they're dead. The
like laying
index
around
case,
all day?
well, no, they're still animated though, so they're just like, I'm dead, but I'm walking around.
But wait, how would that make other people? Well, I guess if they walk around like they're dead, there must have been like the first person to start walking around like your classic zombie, like with the arms out and stuff. Like how does somebody else?
Well,
look
I mean,
at somebody and say, "Oh, that person must be dead."
Yeah, the index case not as happy an ending. So I guess most zombies don't have a happy ending.
Mhm.
So the Mademoiselle X in 1880 was the index case, and Cotard described a woman who she was so convinced that she was dead and that she had no internal organs that she was dead, so she didn't have to eat, and that's how it sort of manifested. But she still like walked around and talked to him and told him about this, and then she died of starvation. So
Yikes.
yeah, so which again more common in the 1880s, but it was because she wasn't eating. Yeah, so none of these are really great zombies. I mean, I think the best zombies are from a virus experiment gone awry, and then they transmit that contagion by biting, and then they're super fast and they want your brains. Yes, always best killed by decapitation if you only have a blunt object, or preferably 2 gunshots to the head. Always the head, right?
Cardio and double tap. Always
Yeah.
important.
Well, what about this? What if this is historical and it's like a prion disease, like Creutzfeldt-Jakob?
Yeah, I didn't
Is
see
the
that as
brain
much
thing? No?
in the internet searches I got, but yeah, that would make sense too,
Like
right?
somebody
'Cause
who
people are
eats
going to be
brains and
delirious.
then has, yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
and they would be contagious, right? I mean, prion disease is exceptionally durable. So if you,
Yeah, but you have
but it
you,
has
you
to be
generally
from the
have to
brain.
ingest.
Yeah.
If you ate their
material and-
brains,
The eating the brain one is more
there you
kuru.
go.
Creutzfeldt Jakob is typically it's typically more spontaneous, although you can get it by coming into contact with a patient who has it. In fact, the one case I had ever been aware of, it wasn't somebody I saw, but I had heard of. The issue was they had suspected the diagnosis, and it was hard to find somebody basically brave enough to do the spinal tap, because the concern is that even a small exposure to the spinal fluid where you're trying to detect this could possibly like affect the anesthesiologist, neurologist, radiologist, or emergency doc who went to go get the specimen. This person was apparently like double gloved, gown, full hood, because it was just, you got to take it very seriously, and it can be very infectious. But I believe you have to come into contact in some form, whether it's eating or otherwise, with the prion infected brain material. And I did do a couple posts about this, so it's a good tie-in.
Yeah, what's sad though is that the doctor would get all donned up like that, and they would send those vials down to the lab, and the poor schlub down there would just open them up and put them on the,
pour them on the
that'd be
counter and
something
like
that
mix them around.
They forgot to say like, "Hey, this is really bad."
Sure, I'm sure they wrote it was really bad on the container, so it's fine.
It was really bad. Do not really touch. Now spin this, but don't run it.
Oh, hey computer, what's up?
I thought it would be nice to take a quick break and review this ad from the 1970s. I think it has to do with werewolves.
Sure. Roll it.
Is it true? The amazing secret of psychokinesis gives you a hairy chest. Don't wait, send $10. Your order will be shipped at once, money back guarantee. Yes, now it may be possible to have the hairy chest and He-Man appearance that you have always wanted and admired. How many times have you envied the guy with the real manly look? Stop dreaming and start doing something about it. What I have to tell you will amaze and please you when you discover what can be done to make yourself into the guy you want to be. Hair will vary among individuals depending upon physical factors and objectives. It is therefore impossible to ensure success for everyone. However, it is sold with a money-back guarantee. Don't wait! Send $10. Your order will be shipped at once to Self-Improvement, Chattanooga, Tennessee, 37401. Well, that was something.
Oh, thanks, computer. That was different.
You didn't like it?
No, it was fine. I technically, it was a medical advertisement from the 1970s ish. It's probably like 40 or 50 years old. I count that as history, and I don't think it had to do with werewolves, just hairy people. I think that's the thing.
It was only $10. Why do so many people want to have more hair on their chest? Is it so they can keep warm?
I mean, actually, nowadays, plenty of people pay more than $10 to remove chest hair, so I guess it was just a different time.
So, did we learn from this advertisement?
Oh, yeah, I think we learned something. Right, Aaron?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, computer.
I will keep looking. I am helping.
Fair enough. Speaking of werewolves, it's a great segue, computer. So, yeah, werewolves are much closer to vampires with regards to their origins and distribution. They were included with the witch hunts of medieval times, and like vampires and witches had their origins deep in more European folklore and the folklore of multiple cultures. People were said to sort of seek the ability to turn into a wolf by various means, which I think they kind of used to fit whatever they wanted to get rid of. So satanic rituals, sometimes they said people drank rainwater from the paw print of a wolf, or there were a bunch of
convenient.
other ways.
With a straw?
What if you inadvertently drank from like an alpaca's paw print or something? Like you thought it was a wolf.
You turned into
a weird alpaca.
Fur. Oh my gosh, alpaca fur is so soft.
Yeah.
Is that fur? Is it?
You just turn in
hair.
Every full moon, you just cuddle yourself for a while.
What do sheep have? Sheep have, I know it's wool, but
yeah,
they call it
hair? I think they call it wool.
I think it's wool. Yeah, alpaca probably wool. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So the term for the ability to turn into a wolf is lycanthropy, and it goes all the way back to the Greeks or before.
Meaning people have been turning into wolves since the Greeks?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. There have been attempts to explain werewolves with medical conditions. in 1963, Dr. Lee Illes matched up the symptoms of porphyria with werewolves. Yawn.
Aaron hates porphyria.
I do. I hate it.
He does not believe in porphyria.
No, I don't. I think it's real. I think it's a real rare disease that, come on, man. The symptom we didn't talk about with vampires was that you get regression of the gums, so your teeth start to look like fangs, which would be, more like a werewolf. And then maybe they said red eyes too. I don't know, fangs and red eyes. Other explanations tried to use genetics. So there is a genetic condition called hypertrichosis. When the genome was mapped in the 90s, there was consideration that this exceedingly rare condition, which causes hair growth all over the body, was something called an atavistic mutation, where we sort of you gain back something that was lost or covered up by evolution. So the idea being that it's something that's still in our genome, but normally suppressed.
So like from the perspective of like, this would have been possibly normal millions of years ago, and now that gene is suppressed.
Exactly. Yeah.
And people want to remove their chest hair.
Yeah. There are scattered cases of true hypertrichosis through history, but very, very rare. And the sufferers were normal otherwise, other than they were just covered in hair everywhere. And lots of times they made a living as an oddity, especially in the Victorian era, which is just not surprising at all. So they'd charge.
This is like the Wolf Boy in the Barnum and Bailey's kind of sideshow scene, and it's an interesting area of discussion because I from what I've read and like kind of seen in documentaries, as much as some folks will try to cast dispersion on the sideshow kind of business, a lot of those folks, especially back then, if you were born with this, where you have literally hair everywhere, your entire face is covered, your arms, and you are so different than everybody else. The sideshow community was like one place where you were accepted as who you were. And so a lot of the folks who did a lot of those performances defended them because they said, look, I made money. This was my living. And yeah, I know theoretically there's exploitation, but I'm in on it. And I had a community of people around me that we were all together because we all had different, whether it was dwarfism or whether it was other things like that. There were just a lot of different things that people, they could feel safe in that community, and make money, make a living on it when you otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a very welcoming community.
If you Google hypertrichosis, you'll see all these pictures. This isn't an old time thing either. Like bunch of modern pictures.
And I was unable to find like a rare disease page or something like that for current people. So if anyone out there knows of this, then it's absolutely a real thing.
But then the problem, what would be like the transition though? You would essentially say like they don't have hair during the day, and then during a full moon, then they have hair.
That wouldn't make sense. Plus, it's so rare that it's hard to see how it would sort of explain werewolves again. This is sort of the same argument with the porphyria. How would that? Because it was felt to be widespread. So
especially because if you look at those videos, or you see like an interview with somebody who has this, it's a person who's just like completely covered in hair, talking about their normal life. So they're not like otherwise. They'd probably
be like, wait, no, it's fine. I'm nice. And then you'd be like, oh, you're not scary.
I'm a tax accountant. Like I just have this condition, and like they're super. They're otherwise normal. So. I don't know. Maybe somebody comes across somebody like that. You hear about it in a village, and then it just sort of perpetuates.
They probably would have just burned them at the stake when they were babies. So in the medieval times.
And maybe they only go out at night because they are ashamed of how they look, and then you can only see them in the full moon because otherwise it's too dark.
That could be. Yeah. Okay, that's one.
Figured it out. We figured out all three of these conditions relatively easily. I think
that's true. I don't know what the problem is. So the cures for accused werewolves through the ages were. Just as good as they were for witches. That is, they usually killed them. So wolfsbane is still named, or got its name from its suspected ability to cure werewolves.
That's an herb, right?
Yep, it's an herb. A herb.
There we go.
Part of a group of flowering plants that include monkshood and aconite and other ones like that. Like tetrodotoxin, it's a sodium channel blocker, but it's very, very it's very hard on the heart. So I think it just is a little bit different mechanism or a different molecule. And it also has, again, it's an anticholinergic toxin in some ways.
It's a messy toxin for sure.
Yeah. Because
I wrote a whole lecture about it for my toxicology rotation in fourth year of medical school, and I don't remember anything I wrote about it. It's
call
not super
poison,
common.
call poison center, yeah.
It will pop up in some herbal treatments, especially depending where you get them. If they're like from some place overseas, they could. It does happen. It's not super common, but it does happen. You can find that substance in certain things you don't want it to be in.
Yeah, so in general, I mean, werewolves, not a lot of medical stuff going on, and it, zombies and vampires both have this sort of, essentially, it's a stand-in for contagious disease, and they don't really have that so much with werewolves. Last one, just let's do mummies. I think mummies are included with monsters primarily as a variation on the dead rise again sort of thing, but with curses, which is great. They make it even better.
Curses are neat.
Yeah, they are cool. There are records of mummification or the preservation of human remains all over the world. So it's a huge topic. I'm not going to go into all of the different traditions, but we'll peripherally talk about two segues, the King Tut curse and mummy medicine.
And which was the bad word he used?
Wiener.
Mummies?
He couldn't say wiener
King
back
Tut?
in the 1920s.
And when King Tut was reigning.
Oh, when he was reigning?
What was his...
I thought it was when he was exhumed.
I just want to like, the picture in my head is they open the tomb in the 20s and there's just like expletives streaming out of it.
No, that's not what happens.
Not how it works.
No. Well, maybe it does. Who knows if the curse is real? So some tombs in Egypt actually do contain curses in the hieroglyphs.
Graffiti.
But it's generally accepted that the mummy's curse is not real. And I can't even say that without the music from Indiana Jones kind of creeping up in the background. So I don't know. But I'm not going to go into a tomb. So
Aaron, if the curse isn't real, why did Brendan Fraser do so many movies about it?
Right, exactly. No, not that one. Not that one. That's that one where he's talking about the amulet and stuff, and they're in the classroom, and it starts. It's like
Aaron's going to start beatboxing.
And then
go ahead.
The Nazi's face is melted.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was the
Ark of the Covenant.
This is a real curse. So, but if mummy's curses were real, I'm pretty sure most of Europe, including the British Museum, would just be a pestilent crater because a lot of mummies. The popularization of the curse took off after the papers covered the opening of King Tut's tomb in the 1920s, and it was such a big media event that I think they just kind of ran with this. Lord Carnarvon was the financer of the opening of the tomb in 1922, and then he died 4 months later. So people just kind of took off with this idea that it was a curse. But what he died of in the 1920s is he cut a mosquito bite on his cheek with a razor and then got facial erysipelas, which is a bad bacterial infection we still sometimes see today, and then died of sepsis because there were no antibiotics or ICUs or supportive care or anything like that.
But what made him cut the mosquito bite?
Exactly. Just a few weeks before his death, a column in the New York Times mentioned that there might be dire consequences to opening the tomb. And then Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of all the Sherlock Holmes books, mentioned that it might be something called elementals found in the tomb that killed Lord Carnarvon, or whatever you say his name.
I can actually believe that. You know why? Because elementals are notoriously painful to deal with when you're playing role-playing games.
It's true.
Like any RPG, you've got to figure out, like, you've got the water elemental, and does fire work against it, or do you need to use wind? And obviously, the fire elemental, you want to use your water spells, and so that one's pretty straightforward. But they're always a pain in the ass.
Carnarvon didn't have a water spell, so and a reporter watching Carnarvon enter the tomb 6 weeks before he died apparently said to somebody, "I give him 6 weeks to live."
But he said it 6 weeks later.
All lined up. Yeah.
I told that guy
It's
6 weeks ago.
Anyway, it's been debunked. People who opened the tomb actually died at a substantially lower rate than everyone died in the 1920s. There were some 54 people that went in the tomb, and they didn't die as often.
They were actually way healthier than their population.
They were fine
because they had all the money.
Rich adventurers, right? Yeah. Exactly. On the other way that mummies play into medical history involves not their condition, which was just that they died and people did stuff to them after they died to preserve them, which is another fascinating topic. But how they were actually turned into medicine. So the word mummia was brought into English from Arabic. And I'm not going to try the Arabic word because I don't speak Arabic. But before the 12th century, mummia referred to ground bitumen, which was extracted naturally from the earth, powdered and sold as a miracle cure. It's just like mostly they would sell it for mostly sex troubles. But I mean, parts of no. Parts of the Middle East, of course, have so much oil that asphalt and bitumen and such would literally just come up and you could pick them off the ground. But mummia sounds the same as mummy, you see, so we just thought they were the same thing. And so
makes sense.
when we started to run out of bitumen to sell to people who had sex troubles, mummia was interpreted and sort of broadened to mean mummy scrapings, which often happened to be black as well because of the way the mummies were prepared. And then they just started to powder mummies.
So it looked like the black, like ditzels that they were picking up and eating off the ground.
Yep.
And then when you
how
scrape
about we just
mummy
powder?
and prepare, it's looked the same, and the words sounded alike, so it's the same thing.
Yep. Yeah. So
Okay.
then,
It tracks.
the long history of just taking mummified corpses and using them for commerce is something we did a lot. It remained in high demand for centuries to the point that some people started to take people that had recently died and then mummify them so they could powder them and then sell them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as one
What
does.
else are you going to do with them?
Yeah.
Throw them on the
And
ground?
I don't know if that's better or worse than the other Victorian custom that occurred with mummies, which was that rich people would have mummy unwrapping parties where they would buy a mummy and then unwrap it at the party, which of course, they would then completely decay and fall into pieces.
How
so
many,
I mean,
how many museum and Egyptology curators had like aneurysms at that sort of thing?
I don't. At the time, none of them. They thought it was great.
None.
They were probably all wasted at those parties.
That's where they probably got them from the museums. Like,
yeah, exactly. This is the biggest argument against the mummy curse. I mean, this happens so much. Yeah. If
now
they weren't
you're saying all the
cursed,
people at the mummy unwrapping parties didn't.
yeah, right.
drop
Wouldn't
dead.
the mummy? I mean, if I were a mummy, I'd be pretty pissed. I'd be like, "You're cursed. You're cursed. You're cursed. You're cursed." And
Like
yeah,
the half-baked scene.
didn't. Yeah.
yeah.
I can't say it on the. Can't say it on the air. So many bleeps.
I did that at work the
You're
other
cool.
day too. You're cool. F you, you're cool.
Yeah. So when it comes down to it, all these monstrous Halloween figures are much more likely to be an allegory humans use to talk about disease rather than the real thing. So vampires are contagion, zombies also contagion, werewolves, I don't know, random tragedy and scary wolves. I mean, before we had science to think about these things differently, they were explanations of our fears and what befell us as humans. And now they're just our fears explained with science instead of science in the case of zombies. So,
but the mummy's curse is real.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so are
zombies are real too. There's actually
and werewolves
yeah.
Yeah.
So
fair.
happy Halloween, y'all.
and Draculas.
Yep.
Well, I think that is all we should have time for today. We appreciate everyone listening, and we'd love to hear from all of you out there. So if you'd like to send us a message or provide feedback, we can be reached through our website, www.poorhistorianspod.com, and there you will find links to our social media sites. We do take emails at poorhistorianspod@gmail.com, and we work to respond to all posts on our various social media accounts. If you have time, please go and leave us a nice 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you happen to listen to us. Every single one of those does help raise the show's platform and profile and gets us more listeners, and we get to keep having more fun producing it. So if you'd like to support the show in other ways, we do have merchandise available through the website, and t-shirts, mugs, all that sort of thing will be there. And if you're old-fashioned, go ahead and send us an audio cassette tape with your thoughts and feelings on it. I'm sure Aaron has a device around his house to play that on, right?
Yep. I do.
Do you actually?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Man, well, until next time, Poor Historians are signing out. AMA, without an interruption.
Yeah, no, I let you do it. I figured I'd
Thanks.
be courteous today.
Wow, that was excellent. Lightning crash. Mike, you did 8 different accents in that.
Wait, so did Aaron.
Yeah, no, we both did. No, Aaron did 4.
Irish
You did
at some
8.
point. Yeah.
It was like a sparring match. We were using different defenses, the attacks.
I see you with Scottish.
Yeah, you did the Scott.
I just wanted to say,
Scotsylvanian.
I want to suck your blood.
Yeah, we all do.
Vlad
Welcome
the Impaler is one
segment.
of my favorite historical characters, by the way.
Who is?
Vlad the Impaler.
Well, you can add some detail. There's not a ton in here, actually.
Really? Oh,
Hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty awesome.
He is.
Nice guy. Welcome, everyone.
Oh, funny. I started Morbius. I did more scrolling on social media during it. It sucked.
Yeah.
It was
I heard it was
so
bad.
So bad.
The acting was atrocious. The
Who was
storytelling was
lead?
nonsensical.
It's almost so
Jared
bad I
Leto.
want to watch it. Like,
Oh, it was
so bad it's good. Is it so bad it's good, or is it just bad?
Mm-mm.
It's just bad.
No, almost. Yeah, like the guy from the new Game of Thrones or whatever, House
Yeah,
of the Dragon.
Matt Smith is a good actor. That's the thing. I mean, he's the bad guy, right?
Yeah, but even with him, it's just not compelling. Like they both walk with a limp, and then they needed to get some cure for their limp, and then so they became vampires.
Sure,
He's like,
as one
no,
does.
I don't want you to do it because if you do it, there are bad consequences. Like you might kill somebody. I killed people, and then the guy's like, I don't care. I don't want the limp anymore. Well, you said medical movie reviews, and I'm an acronym guy.
So it's
Still.
my idea.
Still,
It was your idea. You said it. We did it together. We're like Captain Planet, where our powers combine.
I'm not going to
Wonder
be hard.
Twins.
That guy was worthless.
No, that's Voltron. Oh wait, it was hard a part of Captain
Yeah,
Planet.
there's a guy who gets he can raise the earth. The other person gets the water or wind, and the other person
yeah.
gets fire. And the guy's like, I got animals like me.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody
Yeah.
cares
Well,
about that
now
guy.
it would be like social justice, income inequality, heart.
I think it would be.
Ruth
I want to
Bader
say it would be fun
Ginsburg.
to write. I don't know if it'd be fun to. It'd be exhausting to write.
Yeah, Ruth Bader Ginsburg would form the shell of the person.
Oh, I'm back in now.
Yeah, and
That'd
then
be
the other would
awesome.
be you would be fighting ExxonMobil and Minneapolis.
That brings us to the disclaimer. Episode 37.